Today, we're going to teach you how you could steal 25 million rand in 2 hours. Are we finally going to see the end of the Stalingrad strategy? And lastly, we ask the question, why is Cyril Ramaphosa blue-ticking Jordan Hill-Lewis? Welcome to the Political Insider. Please, if I could ask you to subscribe to this channel. This is growing so nicely. The stories are getting out. It's important that the country hears the truth, and you hear the truth on the Political Insider. So if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It really helps us to get the message out further. Let's kick off about this beautiful grift, the stealing of Tembisa Hospital, where more than 2 billion rand was stolen, leading to the very, very sad killing of Babita Deokaran by criminal syndicates. And we are going to tell you exactly how it was done and what a beautiful grift the syndicates had going at Tembisa Hospital. You know, it wasn't just done with the criminal syndicates. It was done with the help of very senior employees at the Tembisa Hospital. And I'm going to explain to you one part of what the syndicates were doing. It turns out that one of the kingpins of this operation is a person by the name of Stefan Govindraju. So far, the Special Investigative Unit has tracked 600 million rand that was paid to his web of 98 different companies. In one case, Govindraju managed to secure 25 million rand in 2.5 hours, using his shell companies and enabled by crooked officials on the inside. Minutes of the Tembisa Hospital Quotation Adjudication Committee meeting of the 4th of May 2021 show that 50 entities linked to Govindraju were approved for payment in one single sitting. So in 2.5 hours, 50 tenders get approved. That's more than one every 30 seconds. Right? The committee had to assess 60 transactions during this 2-hour meeting, and each one of those transactions had 60 pages of documents. Yet, Mr. Govindraju and his entities walked away with 50 of them. Now, you have to see this to believe this, the way he did it. He set up shell companies. These were companies that didn't really exist. In most cases, they had proxy directors and they had fake addresses. The names are enough, surely, to have, rung bells. The companies had names like Fanel Fruity, Brielle Rumi, Mafaldaramp, Lira Lotta, Omitora, Sogaki, Terrasteria, Caspian Dante, and so it goes on. Clearly, the names were just completely made up. Yeah, there was obviously some name generator that they used that they probably got online and just created one rubbish name after the other. Once those companies had been registered, the identities of the proxy directors are published, so that's not Mr. Govindraju. All of them resigned and ceded control to him. The resigned directors were usually family members, friends, lovers, even co-workers. And according to Cipro, most of these 98 shell companies have fallen dormant. They literally were one transaction companies. It seems like the person on the inside who was doing the heavy lifting at Tembisa Hospital was their chief supply chain management clerk, Duduzile Nobongwana, whose actions led to the murder of Babita Deokaran. Let's not forget, people died for this, and that is just the person who was gunned down because she was about to unearth this corruption. Can you imagine the number of people that died when they went for treatment to the Tembisa Hospital to find out that they had no medicines, or they had no beds, or they had nothing? So, yes, we must quite rightfully mourn the slaying and the killing, the senseless killing of Babita Deokaran for doing her work. But let's not forget, the grandmothers that went to Tembisa Hospital for treatment couldn't get what they needed and died. This isn't just about Babita Deokaran, as important as she was in the story. It's about the thousands and thousands of people that went to that hospital and couldn't get treatment. Now, a few weeks ago, this SIU got a court order to freeze a 6.4 midstream mansion and a 1.8 million rand pension belonging to Nobungwana because she did quite well out of this, obviously. Now, in his defense, Stefan Govindraju has claimed that his network, it wasn't him, it was taken over by corrupt officials. So in other words, they were doing it and he was helpless. He also said that he paid bribes to officials, but this was done on the instructions of Ashley Mtunzi, who at the time was the CEO of Tembisa Hospital. What makes this such a clever trick to try is that Mtunzi died in 2024 before his disciplinary action could be finished. So you can blame him for anything. You can blame him for a tsunami or a volcano. You can just blame him for anything. You can say he was the mastermind criminal. How are we ever going to know? The guy's dead. Now, the Hawks, this is where this thing gets so sad. The Hawks registered a corruption inquiry into Tembisa Hospital in 2022, handing over tons of documents to the SIU. But 4 years later, no arrests have followed. Babita Deokaran, slain in her driveway. Nobody is in jail, other than Kat Matlala. And that's because he tried to kill his girlfriend. But I think we may know the answer. Why the SIU is moving so slowly. Why these wheels of justice grind so slowly. Because the three syndicates that they are investigating are run by Stefan Govindraju. We've just explained about that syndicate. Another syndicate run by Rudolf Mazibuko. And then there's another syndicate run by he who cannot be touched, Morgan Maumela. You know Morgan Maumela, the man has got one half a photo that exists of him in this day of social media. The guy with the 5 Lamborghinis that were taken away, all in the same color, but then returned to him. The guy who the president may or may not know. You know, sometimes you go into people's houses, but you don't know who they are because you're the president. And at one time, the guy was your nephew. But as long as Morgan Maumela is on the list of people to be investigated, you can be guaranteed that no investigation will follow because he is clearly untouchable. We know almost nothing about him, and nobody even knows what he looks like. It must be nice to be Morgan Maumela. You can live a life of comfort and luxury, while people can't go to hospital because the hospital can't even afford medicines. And people get gunned down in their driveways trying to stop your theft, but nothing ever happens about it. It is really sad. But I can tell you that this episode is brought to us by our friends at Trade Nation. If you want to trade in any international market, stock markets, currencies, you know the drill. Any kind of instrument that you would want to trade, then Trade Nation is the place to go. They are cock-a-hoop because Trade Nation have been the sponsors of Aston Villa, who are playing in the Champions League next year. They are based in the UK. It's a very big company, but visit their South African subsidiary at tradenation.co.za and get trading today. We have spoken a lot about the Stalingrad strategy recently. You know, this is where you use every legal trick in the book to avoid standing trial for a crime. Now, perhaps Justice Bayeseni Madlanga has been watching the Political Insider because suddenly even he has spoken out about the Stalingrad strategy. And the retired Constitutional Court judge who has done so well in handling his Madlanga commission was at a book launch and he spoke about how this well-worn tactic could practically be dealt with. He blamed judges who are shirking their duty by not confronting the abuse of court processes. And they could be firm in stopping such abuses. And we've seen Madlanga do it in his commission. We've seen him do it when people didn't want to appear. We've seen him do it when people didn't want to answer questions. where he has known what he's talking about, and he was being able to tell people that, to a litigant, that they are abusing the court process. If there are legal principles for justice, for judicial officers to bring an immediate halt to these practices, then they must use them. And there are the judges in charge. And a person can only talk about the case at hand. Other issues can be handled elsewhere, and the case must be brought to its conclusion. He said that judges should not be overwhelmed by these arguments, because what the Stalingrad tactics are really about is to raise as many points as possible, particularly in succession, just one after the other after the other. You've got the resources, because in many cases you're using state money to fight the state. You go along and you start these court cases that say we can't carry on until this is heard, we can't carry on until that is heard. Obviously, the reigning world Stalingrad champion is our former president, Jacob Zuma, who has managed to delay his day in court for corruption conducted in the arms deal more than a quarter of a century ago. I still had hair when he started his Stalingrad strategy, and the court is no closer to hearing that case. Books have been written about it. I presume children have been fathered with the name of Stalingrad by now. But still, Jacob Zuma bestrides the South African political stage like a colossus. Nobody seems to be overly concerned about the fact that he is having a dump on our constitution. And it's the judges who are doing it. And now we see Jacob Zuma's successor, Cyril Ramaphosa, subscribing to the Stalingrad strategy to get out of facing any repercussion for Phala. But I've got to say one thing to Justice Madlanga. As much as I really appreciate the work that he's done, and I've been very impressed with him as an individual, not every judge is Judge Madlanga. And not every case has top-notch evidence leaders. And not every case is televised wall-to-wall and covered by people that know the law much better than I do. Some court cases happen in far-flung districts with judges who aren't quite as well equipped as what Madlanga is, and especially as what his commission is. So as much as I can understand that the judges should be firmer, I think let's also understand that the process is being abused quite easily, because those very courts aren't sitting with evidence leader like Chaskelson and some of the other evidence leaders. Easy to say, and I think it's quite hard to do. If you want to find out where South Africa is going to, come and join us at our State of the Nation breakfast on the 8th of July, where we are going to hear from Prince Mashele and Wayne Divenage. And we are going to find out about Prince Mashele's project, Rescue South Africa. If you want to join us on the 8th of July, visit our website, sono.co.za, where you can get more information about that event and you can book your space. Time is running out, places are running out. Please come and join us. It's going to be a great event. Now, the Democratic Alliance is learning just how good Cyril Ramaphosa is at using time as a weapon. This has been the man's genius. I say it openly, and I'd love to know what you think about it. But let's face it, Cyril Ramaphosa is able to play the clock better than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And the person who is learning this the hard way is the Democratic Alliance's new leader, Jordan Hill-Lewis. Now, we have all reported extensively about the axing of John Steenhuisen as Minister of Agriculture, as well as a number of other changes that the Democratic Alliance and their new leader, Hill-Lewis, want to make to their allocation in cabinet under the Government of National Unity arrangement. But what is not being reported extensively is that the president has suddenly gone silent. There's been a lot of analysis about the shuffling itself, but it all hasn't really and doesn't take effect until the president says, okay. And suddenly, where's the president? Well, what the president is doing is that he knows that the longer it takes for this to come through, the more it makes the Democratic Alliance look powerless and beholden to the ANC. There can be no doubt that Jordan Hill-Lewis is a man on a mission, and he is keen to show that he is large and in charge of the party. And Cyril Ramaphosa gets that and appreciates that probably better than most. And the one way he can make Jordan Hill-Lewis look a hell of a lot less effective is to just do nothing. Just never answer his phone. Just never say, sure, go ahead. Right? And every day that passes, Jordan Hill-Lewis would look less powerful and more beholden to the ANC. The biggest problem is that the Democratic Alliance sits in a very awkward position of having people in those positions who they have fired already, but they're still in those positions because the president hasn't given the go-ahead. So you end up with Schrodinger's cat. It's alive and dead at the same time. But for the ANC, this is their happy place. The ANC don't want the right people in the right positions. The longer they don't have to fill a position, the more leverage they get with the comrades in their own party, who fall in line in the hope that they can get the position. For President Cyril Ramaphosa, this is his worst nightmare. A significant political party in the GNU who wants to govern better and wants to hold their ministers to account. Whereas the ANC wants to do the exact opposite. They don't particularly want ministers to govern better because it makes them look bad, the rest of them that aren't doing a job, and they want to keep everybody in a permanent state of unease. Let's remember that it's been more than a month since Cyril Ramaphosa suspended former Minister of Social Development, Sisisi Talashe, and there's still no indication that he's about to fill that position, because he knows the longer it takes, the more the comrades have to keep quiet, the more they have to toe the line, the more they have to declare their fealty to the leader. So just in the hope that they get the position. We're seeing a clash of operation cultures. The DA wants to govern better, whereas the ANC couldn't give a damn about governance. They want to do politics better. Every political appointment in the ANC, especially ministers, is an opportunity for Cyril Ramaphosa to either reward an ally or to co-opt a political foe. So he never moves fast on a change of leadership. The other entrepreneurial parties that form part of the GNU don't have this problem, because invariably if they've got a cabinet minister or a deputy, it's them. It's the person who started the family business in the first place. The Democratic Alliance is a big party with many talented people to call from, and they've got their own internal dynamics. So they're desperate to get out there and show that they could govern better, especially as this is an election year. So what could Jordan Hill-Lewis do? Well, the answer to that is very little. But he may have to wait a very, very long time. If Cyril Ramaphosa, who's able to do this kind of thing beyond the level of time that we would normally be able to do it, he could wait literally months before he approves it or disapproves it. The longer he drags this on, the more emasculated Jordan Hill-Lewis looks, the more powerful Cyril Ramaphosa looks. As I see it, like everybody, I was swept up in the drama of this whole new shuffle within the DA. But I got a feeling that Cyril Ramaphosa sees that he has got those people now, everybody waiting on him, and he may just take months before he finally makes a decision to say yes or no. It's Politics 101, baby. Thank you for joining us on the Political Insider. We'll see you again soon.